Can you get in there?
Church field.
I was going to say. Hi, Governor Cindy Boyle. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you. How's it? Good to see you, Stan.
Wendy, was there?
Drinking really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Have a seat. You got snow here.
Indeed.
It's about time.
Yeah. It's been a short supply in the state. I don't think we have anything on the ground this year. None. Got nice.
Well, these days you have to travel to Louisiana to see snow.
Governor's like, sure, do you want to? Yeah. Can you get me a cheese? Just a second. There. Joe. Well, greetings, everybody.
Greetings.
Hello.
How things going?
Great.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
It's a nice day to be traveling, too. Anyway, we're going to talk about PFAS and talk a little bit about my new budget proposal that we're announcing today. But first of all, I want to meet the Secretary of the Department of Natural Resources, Karen Coleman.
Hi, good morning.
Nice to meet you. Good morning. So nice to meet you.
You too.
Karen's got a great background, primarily working at the national level, but she understands Wisconsin well, and looking forward to having her on the So I just want to begin, and I know our work on PFAS, up and down thing, and so I hope that what we're putting in this next budget is actually going to make a difference. We have to get beyond the idea that, this may not surprise you, as of March 25th, we have reached the end of the effort to make PFAS the thing that we need to deal with, because the Republicans made the process so weird that we have not ever, it's like I've been in Congress twice 5 years now, 6 years almost, and we haven't been able to identify PFAS as something of concern in the Department of Natural Resources rules. So this bill will change that. We're going to just accept the fact that PFAS are not something we want in our water or in our issues at all, whether it's wells, whether it's municipal work. We have to understand that we're going to have a minimum amount that is allowed, I think. And so that's the first thing that you need to know, is that even though and I'll put it outside, the Republicans that have not been really excited about doing anything about PFAS, they've essentially made the system not work, because it's been 4 years and now we still haven't had any movement. So it's the things that I want to talk about today is PFAS and clean water in general. We're going to continue and expand our well compensation program that we began during the pandemic, which it was really quite extraordinary. We replaced 400 wells, we treated 100 wells, and we sealed 180 wells across the state. So that will continue to be in operation, and the entire budget that we're looking at for clean water will be about $145 million. And that includes the money that's been sitting with the legislature for a couple of years, that Joint Finance Committee. The bill will take care of that. We'll also be putting aside some of that money around lead pipe removal and programs things like filtered lead and other contaminants in homes and schools. Right now, across the state, but especially in Milwaukee and more urban areas, lots of lead pipes, lots of, and the ability to remove them, saying, in a hurry, it is almost impossible just because it's a huge workload. There's not enough people to do the work. So we're going to continue getting rid of lead pipes, but we're also going to get filters in the homes that haven't had that removed. We're going to set PFAS standards via law rather than continuing to use the present system to get enough people behind it. On the other side, that will be set in this new law. And we'll have a PFAS community grant program, and including grants to businesses, and also begin some really important research. I'll use this as an example. During the pandemic and shortly thereafter, Wausau had a significant amount of PFAS in their water. We have to encourage research around that so that we can find ways to actually destroy the PFAS instead of just putting them in a holding tank. So that's some of the other things we're doing. We're also going to hold farmers harmless if they unknowingly spread biomass that has PFAS in it. So that kind of takes care of that issue that has been an issue in this part of the state, but others where we are making sure that everybody knows that if they unknowingly spread biomass that may have come from a municipal water cleaning area, that they will be held harmless and they get the PFAS out of their water too. And also provide, as people need to do something with their wells, if they need it's a period of time where they need water, we'll provide bottled water for them. So it's a pretty comprehensive bill, and we feel people understand how important it is. We've had people in the Marinette area messing with this for how many years now, and other Campbell outside, Toma Campbell outside across the city. So we're going to work to close down wells that aren't working appropriately, and absolutely get rid of PFAS so that we know with great clarity that we're making sure that people aren't drinking PFAS. So that's what's going to happen in this next budget. We're going to work at it, get it across the finish line. We're going to need help, and hopefully, if you see value in it, we can contact your legislators, because this is important. This is go time. We can't. I've been governor for almost 6 years now. And this has been an issue for 6 years, and there's no reason to pretend that PFAS aren't harmful, because they are. And let's get it done. Let's get it out of our water, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't know if you have any additional comments you want to share, Terry.
I'll just say it's a great comprehensive proposal, and so it sort of goes from the source to the finish line and trying to address the issues. I think you guys are sort of already in the mix of it, in the middle of it, so it'd be great at some point here in this conversation to really understand what you've been grappling with, what gains you've been able to make, what challenges you see, so that we can also bring those lessons to other places in the state that are facing these same issues.
Will the administration for what you're proposing be out of the Department of Natural Resources?
Yes.
Have you had any indication from the legislature, the majority, that they're at least interested in looking at this sort of thing?
I think they will be. That the fact that we weren't able to have get anything done thus far. It's tended to be surround making sure that farmers are held harmless. This states that clearly. And so one would think, since that issue is can be resolved, that will open up some more minds. But, we've as I said before, just identifying the level of PFAS that should be or should to be there is something we've been working on for almost 6 years, and actually our work is going to be officially done March 25th on that issue. And so the timing is right, for sure. Yes, sir.
So if I'm understanding what you said, in your budget bill, you're going to set a standard for PFAS and groundwater. That's what we're talking about, is the rulemaking on groundwater.
Right.
The scope statement will run out in March. And so this will not be a restarting of the normal process. We will actually legislatively set a standard.
Yes.
Correct? So we're just going to...
That we're pulling the PFAS out of the
rulemaking process and set up legislatively a number.
Right.
Can you share with us that number?
Well, I think we still do need to go through the rulemaking process, but it just makes sure that we are setting that standard based off of what DHS is telling us should be for the EPA standard.
Those are two different things, because the rulemaking process takes 30 months. So are we saying we're going to go through another 30 months once the budget is passed to establish a groundwater standard? Is that what's being said?
Can you help me out?
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in. So I think there are two different things. The governor's talking about his budget investments in addition to separately the rulemaking process, because the answer to your question is that we have gone through 30 months. That rule has been delayed by the legislature because of the RINS Act, which is...
We're fully aware of that.
Yeah, right. So correct. That's why we have to begin the rulemaking process again, because we can't use that scope.
Well, speaking on behalf, we have 4 people here, Save Our Water, SOH2O, who've been working on this. And I don't mean to monopolize this conversation, but 3 of the folks who live in the town of Peshtigo since 2017, they found out that wells were contaminated. And that's 7 years. It's more than 7 years.
Yeah.
And another 30 months, it'll be 10 years. We don't really find that an acceptable solution. That you find out your well has been poisoned, and right now, 7.5 years, there's been no standard on groundwater. And if what's being proposed is we're going to restart the process of another 30 months, that is not only 10 years, but it's possibly you or somebody else at the start of another new administration. It scares the living daylights out of us that we might go through from the time the budget gets passed, which is, July, right? Do you see the scariness for everybody?
Absolutely. But we can provide resources to individuals to have their wells cleaned and go deeper or whatever. So that money is still available. It will be available to well owners immediately after the budget is passed. So regardless of what the system is as far as what's safe and what's not safe, let's just say whatever it is, we can provide the money for you to take care of your well.
Governor,
doesn't that help?
I think Cindy.
Yeah, I'm going to caveat a couple things.
Sure.
So, yes, 7.5 years. You well know you've been an advocate, and we respect and appreciate your efforts in this arena. Let that be understood, first of all. I got a little excited when I heard you say that it would be a legislative, you would be able to, press is going to jump on this word, but circumvent the rulemaking process
Right.
and just put this into law. That made me get enthusiastic.
Right.
I'm now
I
understanding
must have misunderstood.
that might not be the case. So if the case is actually, it's my understanding that the scope statement expires on March 12th.
Right.
We understand all too well the constraints and the ridiculousness around the RAINS Act. That's a different battle. The RAINS Act was triggered by the current rulemaking process, and that scope statement accounted for 20 parts per trillion. If 20 parts per trillion triggered the RAINS Act, and you're not sharing a number with us, and I understand that because that comes from DHS, presumably based on everything we've understood so far, DHS recognizes a safer number. We respect and appreciate that because we too know the importance of a safe number. We are also pragmatic. 7.5 years does that. And a safe number is one thing, but if a safe number means a lower number, which obviously it does, we all know that really 0 PFAS are safe. And 20 parts per trillion triggered the RAINS Act. We know that a lower number is going to do the same. So why would I have any reason to think 30 months from June or July when the budget is passed, we're going to be in any different conversation than we are in right now sitting at this table?
Sorry, if I can just interject.
Yeah.
That was the piece that the governor's talking about. It provides an exemption from the RAINS Act to do the
The
PFAS.
legislative part provides an exemption.
His
to the
budget
RAINS
will
Act.
provide an exemption to the RAINS Act. So that was what he was talking about. So we have the rulemaking process, but then also the RAINS Act exemption
That matters.
happening at the same time.
huge.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes.
That matters.
Sorry, just wanted to
Thank
jump
you.
in.
That is an important component.
Yes. Sorry for missing.
I'm going to chew on my next thought for a second.
Okay.
Stan, did you have some questions or thoughts?
Well, I feel a little silly, actually, Governor, because having had a little experience in this arena, you are not the reason that we have these delays.
I understand.
I mean, this should have been handled a long time ago. This should have been taken up by the legislature. They should have shown some leadership on it. Now, early on, I can understand where they would, the legislature might equivocate on things because we don't know the severity and all of that sort of thing. But they know it now.
Right.
I mean, they're aware of it. I mean, this is a national issue. And yet, there's this foot dragging at best, and at worst, just flat out ignoring these sorts of things. Now, I don't understand why that's not getting talked about more, because that's where the problem lies.
Right.
I could understand if this was some policy thing that, they wanted to tag to a bunch of liberals or something, but this isn't. This is a life and death matter going forward into our children and our grandchildren's lives, and they're playing with it.
I know. I've been there.
Of course, Chuck and I echo Stan's remarks. Instinctively, I cannot help but want to respond to that and say, yes, it's true. Yes, it's probably a living nightmare, the role you currently assume, but I can't, my instinct tells me it is just still not right to get behind a us and them fight around this, because we are never going to get this issue to move forward. So last summer, the federal government established a federal drinking water standard. That sort of thing and a hazardous substance designation. Those two things haven't happened in 30 and 40 years.
Right.
30 and 40 years. That tells you two things. That tells you how good lobbyists are at their job. And it more importantly tells you just how dangerous PFAS are. That in spite of them being good at their job, it was still done. Why am I rambling on about federal drinking water standards? Because that affects people like the mayor who live in the city, people like Doug who live in the city, and have the benefit of drinking water off of a public utility. So yes, your remarks about there being funds available, and that's important. I'm not suggesting that lane isn't critical to earmark funding to provide people some dollars to make sure that their wells are safe. But what those of us, Trig and Stan and Chuck and I, don't currently have is the same protection that those people on a public regulated water system benefit from. We don't have a drinking water standard for groundwater. And I can't emphasize the importance of that enough. I understand it is going to be extremely expensive. It's going to be very difficult. Everything around PFAS is very difficult. But that doesn't mitigate the need that it still has to happen. So just please, make sure, both of you, don't lose sight of that. I understand that sometimes it can be comforting to be able to say, well, we are, and not just comforting, but justifiable, that we are still earmarking dollars to do the important work, but that doesn't mean that the groundwater standard isn't still essential.
Oh, absolutely. No.
Yeah, okay. So if I heard it correctly, the RAINS Act would be overcome by virtue of what you're putting into the new budget.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that helps, but also the money would be available immediately,
Right.
which is important.
I think jumping off of that point, my career was in education, so I worked at all different levels of education, so I always think about the kids first. And you mentioned research, and one of the things we're concerned about in the Marinette area is losing our 2-year campus. And we have been talking about, is there a possibility to be put out there to think about some of this kinds of research and the other research that you're thinking about? Because I think this is, Stan likes to use the phrase ground zero, but we appreciate you're up here because rural areas sometimes get forgotten, and there are a lot of students and their families that live in the circumstance where they don't have access to city water. And I appreciated you labeling this the year of the kid, because while we need to take care of all of us, we need to change our future for all of those kids. So I thank you for that, and I really hope anybody, regardless of where your political aspirations are, can put kids first. So thank you for taking that and thinking about that and coming to a rural area, because we have lots of important kids here.
Yeah, you sure do. What is the status of I know it's closing, right? It's closed. The 2-year campus.
We have an agreement, the county still is in an agreement with the UW, and they are currently working diligently to keep the theater piece alive, and then the rest of the property, they're determining what to do. It's a financial burden for the county, so there's a group of us that have formed something called the Association for Community and Culture, and we're trying to be supportive and help the county think about different ways they could repurpose that while honoring the culture in our area and keeping our community together.
Yeah, great. Yes, sir.
So I want to tell a story about you.
Good.
Kind of
There's a lot of them.
And it's kind of a sideways story about you, but as I mentioned, folks here, the public first found out about the PFAS contamination in the city and in the town of Peshtigo in late 2017. And the relationship with the DNR during the course of the next, 14 months or so was not great, not a lot of information. And then in January 2019, it's probably a date you remember, I got a phone call from someone in the DNR, and she's retired now, her name was Darcy Fuller. And basically, the world changed. And Darcy said, "We haven't been doing enough, how can I help?" From that point on, we had more of a partnership with the DNR than we had frustration. There's always frustration. Bureaucracies don't move as fast as we would like, but we had more of a partnership than some adversarial situation. And that's all because we had a new governor who had new people in the DNR, and I just want to say thank you. And I hope that your mission will be like Darcy's was. How can we help?
Absolutely.
And we are looking for practical solutions. I think you've had the best interest of the public and our kids and our health and the environment, but I also know how the budget process works. The governor proposes, the legislature disposes. And last time, they threw your budget out and they wrote a new one. So what can we do to make the good things in your budget proposal not get thrown out? How can we help this process?
I think the caveat that I talked about before, where farmers would be held harmless if they didn't normally do what they did. I think that's really critical. That's where a lot of the Republican pushback came. They just assumed that farmers themselves would be held accountable, which, from my vantage point, was never the case. I mean, FICO, for example, would probably fit in that category. Farmers, I would say
Not so much.
Or the city, but it wasn't part of that. And so that, to me, that was the defining issue that didn't allow us to move forward past. Having that part in the law where the farmers would be held harmless, I think is critical. So if you talk to your legislators, talk about that. And there's going to be money in the budget, frankly, for people to clean up their wells, go deeper if they need to, connect with places that have clean water, whatever. The money will be there. And but I think this idea that we are going to be punishing farmers was just a ruse to make sure that the companies that make this stuff have a skin in the game.
Well, I think you're referring to Senate Bill 312, which we urged you to veto, and you did. And there's one sentence in there from that bill which gave a get-out-of-jail-free card to people like Tiger. And we have not changed our opinion, SOH2O, we haven't changed our opinion, that if that is in any piece of legislation, budget or otherwise, that suddenly restricts the enforcement authority of the DNR on a corporate polluter, we would find that unacceptable. And I hope that that message is sent to the legislature. You can't keep inserting these loopholes that hurt the DNR. And frankly, it's been the DNR, has been and the spills law, has been the only authority that has forced any remediation, any cleanup, any accountability, bottled water it's been the spills law. And that's why we keep emphasizing the groundwater standard. If we had a groundwater standard, we'd have more than just the spills law to work with.
So, Governor, do you think with the provision in there for the holding the farmers harmless, everything's about litigation and liability, do you think the legislature would come along with that and agree? Because you've had, I think, $100 million last year. That a lot of that didn't go anywhere. Obviously, didn't go into any wells or remediation or testing. Do you think there's a chance that that is enough of a provision to push some of this money out where it should go?
Absolutely. 125. And you just combine it with what we do, just in general. I went through the numbers of wells that we've closed and provide money for people to close them down. Go deeper so that their water is cleaner. That would continue and at a faster pace also. So I know it's been horribly frustrating for you. I apologize for not fully explaining why it's going to be different this time. And I think that's a critical. But we need their help. I mean, as simple as that. we don't need to fight about this issue. And we have a surplus. And so there's money to help, and there's will to make sure that the bad guys are held accountable, and those that aren't bad guys, or vice versa, those that aren't bad guys are not held accountable. That's a good point to create.
And you know, the mayor's question is spot on, right? Because we all know. So what we're talking about when we talk about farmers is the catchphrase is innocent landowners. That's been very effectively peddled.
Okay.
You're looking at innocent landowners.
Yeah.
So when I hear that word, it definitely triggers me because I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
They are literally innocent landowners. And
Right.
I can't begin to express enough how much empathy, you know, everyone at this table has with the additional innocent landowners being the farmers.
Right.
I mean, talk about terror, you know, if I were one of them. And that is not something that should be underappreciated or, you know, underconsidered, and it needs to be spelled out in order to get the Republicans on board, that they have those protections.
Outside of Plume area where there's no one responsible
Yeah.
party, what are you doing?
Right.
There's no money that's going anywhere, so
Right.
there's got to be middle ground.
Yep.
We understand the complexity, and you know, but when there's not a responsible party and there's no money to help those folks, then they're just basically hanging out with no opportunity to remediate their issue,
Right.
wells, waters.
Right. This,
And
this,
at the
this
very
would help
least, to
them.
protect them, right? So that they aren't
They can't even
living
be
in
tested.
fear of being able to, you know, of being come at by
Right.
their neighbors. I mean, none of this was their fault.
Right.
None of this was any of our faults.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear that there's strong language in there that would provide the Republican Party assurance around that issue so that that can be put to bed once and for all.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I don't anticipate that some other thing would come to replace.
Take its
the
place. I
place.
know, that's the worry, right?
Go ahead.
I probably bring this down to a more personal issue for me, and having a contaminated well with a treatment system on it. And I've got great drinking water because of it right now. I do. But again, the mayor mentioned there's a lot of people outside the plume that they're getting nothing. And until this is all decided. Yeah. You know, my frustration, or I sat down this morning and I'm thinking about all the holdups that have been thrown in the way to get something done regarding this PFAS. I mean, the RAINS Act 2017 that was initiated, that hamstrung not just water issues, but issues across the board. And we tried to get anything done with $10 million in today's money. That's
Right.
nothing.
Right.
That's nothing. We have the spills law being challenged in court. If that goes away, you know, again, which brings back to our concern about not having a groundwater standard. If there's not a groundwater standard, what's the next roadblock?
Right.
But, you know, go way back. I served for 35 years on the Menominee River Area of Concern Citizens Advisory Committee. It took us 35 years to get Ansel, Tycho, arsenic contamination cleaned up in the river. Fought hard to get that accomplished. We did it. And then the same company contaminates my personal drinking water. Talk about a kick in the pants. You know, so we have, me and a lot of people have a real frustration, and we're a little bit, I'll say, nervous about what's to come next or what's not to come next. You know, and again, back to Wendy's point, then you know, I get a little more cheery. We got a university that's being shut down. The facility, beautiful facility out there, be a perfect spot for this empty building. Looking for that facility that can help solve this problem. So there's a little encouragement.
May I follow up on what Trig had to say? A number of years back, Eldecar was getting into the groundwater in the Central Sands area. And it was a critical problem. I mean, it was, they could connect it to miscarriages and other sorts of things that were going on. And there was just this constant dialogue back and forth that, well, we don't know where it is, we don't know how serious it is, we don't know what the standard should be. And it wasn't, as far as I was concerned, it wasn't until the creation of the Groundwater Research Center at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, where they began to show with evidence where it was coming from, what the plume was, what the levels were, and otherwise. And, you know, there's Missouri says it, show me, but, you know, if we just talk about this, Governor, it's only words. But once both the culprits and the public see that there is something physical there, focused on that issue, I believe it makes a difference. It helps rally the public and helps, in general, people, including local governments, take this more seriously. Because a half hour from now, when you're gone, most of us, maybe I'm speaking for myself, will be thinking about something else, which means, you know, it's important to have something there that reminds us that we're trying to act on this. And then in the future, when you introduce other budgets, you're able to, as with the center, expand it to take a look at this or take a look at that, with a certain amount of confidence that the people who are doing it know what they're doing, so we can get away from the lawyers and the people who want to slip out from under the responsibilities of it.
Got it.
I can piggyback a little bit about that because you're referencing another contaminant that was in groundwater in the process that took place in order to address that. I'm going to leave this with you, and I'm saying this on purpose because it's really important that the press actually connects this. You know, this is a simple chart that talks about the groundwater standards in Wisconsin. And if we just take two very familiar ones to everybody, right? Cyanide and arsenic. Who doesn't know cyanide and arsenic are not probably good things to consume? Correct?
We're all there.
Cyanide was set as a groundwater standard in 1985, arsenic 1989. So we've enjoyed the comfort of knowing that those things we can safely assume are not going to be in our groundwater. Let's give some comparables. Cyanide, 1 drop of cyanide in a bathtub is dangerous. Arsenic, 1 drop in 25 bathtubs is dangerous. So the larger the body of water, still 1 drop, it tells you how dangerous it is. PFAS, 1 drop in 65,000 bathtubs. And we have been trying for 7.5 years to get protection around this, and we have no groundwater standards. And thank you for addressing it, because it is solely because of the RAINS Act.
Yes.
It's deadly. I'll leave that with you. I'm sure it's information you already know.
It's scary when you think you can literally drink more arsenic in this cup than you could PFAS. And people don't understand that because the measurements are so tiny. It's poison. It's poison in our water.
I was wondering if you could broker some type of a deal on that scope statement to get an extension on it so we can work within that same scope statement. But let's say we get a 12-month extension on there.
Yeah. Whatever we can do to get it done. Just faster.
Okay, so you're open
Sure.
to working with the legislature on that.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I wanted, we talk about money and that, and you know, I've looked at some of their SEC filings, and I think they've spent, our responsible party has spent in excess of $300 million already. So it's a lot of money that can go away real fast. So how much money did you say that the state had set aside for this?
145 million.
Yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes.
Anybody
Not
else?
to devalue the importance of that, because we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're getting there.
Yeah.
As you can see, the budget will have money in it to change your well, deeper, whatever it takes to get to a point. But I do understand the issue of making sure we get standards. And I apologize for not saying that correctly up front, but I think we can do some things as we do that.
Well, we want to be your partners, Governor.
Yeah, good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Well, wait, anything we can do to help this process along and work collaboratively is really important.
We're getting there.
And I think we need to add to the innocent landowner verbiage, the innocent municipality.
Absolutely,
Because-
yeah, 100%.
Because a wastewater treatment plant is receiving someone else's pollution. They're not creating it.
Right.
Yeah, and the sludge and the, that they sit there and have, lost all that you mentioned, having that in their possession and having to figure out how you now dispose of a hazardous substance affordably
Yeah.
without passing it on to ratepayers. It's just a nightmare.
doesn't-
Everything around PFAS is a nightmare.
It doesn't go away.
No.
But if we stopped using it,
Yes, it would.
it would go away eventually.
Yes.
And that's where you find yourself. There's no way around it. That is where you land.
Well, this is a small example, but we had money in the last budget, or maybe it was federal money that we just spent with fire departments picking up theirs. That's done.
Right. That's important.
Yeah, we have money left over in that pot because everybody is, fire department has the opportunity to get rid of it and to get.
You put money in this year's budget for clean water funds that we're going to be probably one of the first municipalities to filter water that comes up the ground so that we're not putting contaminated PFAS back into our sanitary system. So, things like that can help municipalities as well. But that's a very small start to a big part of it.
Yeah, but it's important.
So we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks to your leadership too. All of you. You've been there.
Big people.
Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate the time and
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
didn't realize we'd be in a church.
Let that sink in.
Hear our prayers.
Let that sink in.
Here, Governor, here are our
Thank you, Governor.
Appreciate you coming there.
Good to see you again.